What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. This is Fantasy Football 201, an advice show from a fellow fan on how to be successful in fantasy football. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July weekend. We're going to get started on fantasy football videos again, early July, heading into the season. I'm back again. It's been quite a while since I made fantasy football videos. Had a lot going on, but we're back and we're ready to make some videos for this year. So what we're going to do to start things off is I'm going to start with a mock draft from Sleeper. I'm going to go over some mock drafts over the next 2 months, going to preview each of the divisions and all the teams, and then give you my big board of who I would take in each round heading into the fantasy football season so that you're prepared and ready to go for 2024. So if you're interested, please check out my channel and check out the description below for other content as well. So we're going to get started on this. So basically what I'm doing for this draft is a PPR, full PPR mock that's going to be from the Sleeper app. I took the 101 position because I want to demonstrate who I would take number one. And then we'll have more discussions as the season goes along about what you do in each particular round. But I'm going to start with the 101 position. This is Snake Draft full PPR, and we'll go ahead and get into it. So as you can see on this screen here, I had the number 101 pick here, and this is an interesting year where in fantasy football in years past, it's always been running back heavily prioritized. But over time, it has actually switched to being the receivers are more valuable positions. And if you go back and you watch my previous channels on YouTube and previous shows, I've been pushing for this for a while, that you want to lock up an elite wide receiver in your first round if at all possible, because these are the positions that really are consistent and give you bang for your buck. Running backs are often very hard to rely upon because of injuries, one, and then two, because the NFL has shifted to more of a timeshare in a lot of backfields. And then three, with the addition and the popularity of PPR, wide receivers have immense value as this league has transitioned to being a pass-first league. So all that being said, you can see here within this first round, a lot of wide receivers are going in the early first round picks, which has been an anomaly from years past. And I believe the fantasy football community is catching on to this, that you need to lock up your lead wide receivers, especially since we're kind of having a turning of the guard of the running backs from that 2017, 2018 era of guys that really dominated for quite some time. Now we're kind of a little more up in the air on some of these running backs. All that being said, is in the 101 position, I would still take Christian McCaffrey. A lot of this has to do with the scarcity of the position. So Christian McCaffrey has been a dominant running back for years. He did have a blip for a little bit with the Carolina Panthers, but a lot of that is due to line protection, injuries that he's had in years past. He is a relatively injury-prone player. But since he has moved over to the San Francisco 49ers, he's been far and away the best running back in fantasy football. Really no question about it at all. There are some questions about his age, which bring some other guys into the fold like Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson as guys that you could consider with the 101. But given that you have other options at wide receiver that could step up into the position, and you really don't have a lot of players that are purely like Christian McCaffrey, you look at the number 2 running back taken on this board, Bijan Robinson. A lot of question marks about him. What is his timeshare going to look like in Atlanta? He really did not show a lot in his first year, but they've got a new coaching staff now. You know, what is Raheem Morris going to do with him? New quarterback. Which quarterback are they going to have? Breece Hall has got question marks because New York has been a pretty mediocre offense. What is Aaron Rodgers going to look like when he comes back? Jahmyr Gibbs has question marks, number 4 running back, because what is it going to look like with David Montgomery? Christian McCaffrey is locked into his number 1 position among running backs, and I think it is not very close. So if you have the 101 position, I would take Christian McCaffrey, as I did here in this mock. And I'll talk about some of these guys just kind of sporadically as we go through the people that pop into my head, but I'm going to be focusing on what I would do in this position. So key things I look at here in this first round, as I said, a lot of wide receivers. Overall, I agree with most of these selections. I think these are all good picks. The one that I have some hesitancy on is Garrett Wilson. You know, just what is Aaron Rodgers going to look like? Is he going to be healthy? We saw how that went for Garrett Wilson last year when he went down So there's a lot of question marks for me about how he's going to look, but I think in the back end of the first round, that's a solid pick. I would just maybe in that case probably prioritize a running back over taking Garrett Wilson, but still, late first, early second is good value for me there. We take a look at the second round here. Guys that I really like from the second round, really like the value of Saquon Barkley. I think moving over to the Eagles into a run-first system is going to do wonders for his value. This is a guy that has been really the only focal point on that offense for years. And now he's going to be moving over to Philadelphia, where he's going to have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts as a runner. A lot of those question marks around what Hurts' rushing ability is going to look like. Is he going to take touches away from Saquon? I personally am not too worried about that because you've seen guys in this system be very successful, like DeAndre Swift, even with Jalen Hurts getting a lot of those touchdowns. Saquon is going to have a lot of opportunity on this team, and I think that if you can get him in the second round, this is going to be incredible value for him. Guys that I don't like in this round, Sam Laporta going here in the second round to me is a little bit too high. I mean, we know that he did have a very good season last year, and he's looking like a breakout tight end. I just don't see him as being second round value. I think that it would be, there are some up and coming tight ends that could have some very good value. And I think that Laporta is starting to get into that range of Travis Kelce type hype where he's starting to elevate himself to a position where he's really not worth the value at that pick. So you get around to the point where you get back to me here at the 212 position, as reminded, this is a snake draft. And some of the guys that I was considering in this position are wide receivers like Mike Evans, who I took in the next pick. Travis Kelce is there if I wanted to lock up the tight end position. Stephon Diggs is interesting heading to Houston. You also have Josh Jacobs with Green Bay. You have some quarterbacks you can look at as well. If I wanted to take a flyer on Jalen Hurts, I could do that. I think that would be decent value there. But ultimately, I went with Travis Etienne. And the reason why is because Travis Etienne, getting him at the late second round for a guy who, for the most part, last season was in the top 3 among running backs throughout the season. The Jags had some struggles late that kind of hurt his value, and I think that the Jags in general are kind of a stale NFL team that a lot of people don't want to buy into right now. But Etienne is a great value, and he has that chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. So I think that he's going to be locked in as a elite running back. And getting him late, especially in a draft where a lot of these elite wide receivers are taken, and then now the guys that you have coming up have some question marks associated with them. So, for example, I'm just going through the ones that are coming up next. Evans is a target machine and did well last year, but he is getting older. DJ Moore, another very talented receiver, but he's going to have some competition with Keenan Allen and now Rome Odunze there. Travis Kelce getting up there in age. Stephon Diggs, what is that going to look like now with Nico Collins and Tank Dell? Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry are both kind of getting up there in age, and I'm not really sure what their situation is going to look like on a new team. So you take the best value available there, and to me, that's Travis Etienne. So I'm happy with where I'm at this draft now. I've got an elite RB1 and RB2 locked in, and if I could get some solid receivers there as well, I would be pretty happy with my team moving forward. So in the next pick, I take Mike Evans. And the reason why I take Evans over some of those other guys like Moore and Diggs is because of that known timeshare. He's got excellent rapport with Baker. They clearly favored him in that offense. There are some question marks now as you move from Dave Canellis to new offensive scheme, a new offensive coordinator. Then I saw a report that came out over the weekend talking about how they're going to use Chris Godwin more in the slot to try to represent what the Rams did with Cooper Kupp. But to me, Mike Evans is just a better receiver than Chris Godwin. And I think that with the quarterback, wide receiver chemistry that you already have in place there, Evans is still going to be locked in. So I'm taking Evans because I know that he's going to get a large target volume in that offense. And I feel pretty confident that even though he is getting up there in age, he's still going to give me some good value. That being said, I'm going to try to get some receivers later on that I think have some high upside that can give me some good value later on, because I'm going to be pulling from some of the lesser receivers, considering that a lot of them have already gone in the first 2 and now going to be 4 rounds because I'm going to go in the back half. So we kind of get around to the end of the 3rd round. Some picks that I like here. As I said, I like Stephon Diggs and DJ Moore going in this range. I think if you were in that same position around like the 2 to 6 range, getting those two receivers there would be good. I just don't like them as much as Evans. Um, a pick that I don't like is CJ Stroud, and I know that he's getting a lot of hype right now because of how he did last year and how he played, but he really does not provide a lot of rushing value. And if you're going to be taking a quarterback at the top 3 rounds, you got to make sure that they're giving you some good rushing value. So why CJ Stroud would go before Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson is a little bit confusing to me. And again, this is just against the computer, so I don't know how it's going to look in real life. And there's a lot that can happen between now and draft day when you're going against some other owners. But CJ Stroud going that high to me is a mistake. There's going to be a lot of people that will probably take Patrick Mahomes in the top round or 2. That's also a mistake because really, like, if you're going to be getting a quarterback this high, you've got to get guys that you know are going to be rushing the ball in for touchdowns, like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Mahomes does give you a little bit of rushing value, I guess, but not as much as people are led to believe. And Stroud gives you even less than that. So taking him in the 3rd round here, to me, is a mistake. The 4th round. So we look at some picks here that I like. That I'll keep with the quarterbacks here. Lamar Jackson, getting him at this point in the 4th round is excellent value. Lamar has kind of had some up and down fantasy performances, and it kind of has been disappointing from time to time. But he's going to be getting a lot of volume. And there was a lot of situations last year where they kind of had some touchdown regression that didn't really work in Lamar Jackson's favor. A lot of stuff went to Gus Edwards, and Gus Edwards is now no longer there. So you factor in that Gus Edwards has gone to the Chargers, and then now Lamar Jackson, you figure that there's going to be some skew to him getting some more touchdowns. I like his value there in the 4th round. I think that is excellent value if you can get him there. I also really like Malik Neighbors as a rookie flyer that you can get at wide receiver there. I don't know about that team that has 4 wide receivers there at that team 9 there. I don't know if that's a good strategy, but Malik Neighbors is going to be a good value to me because you look at the guys that he's competing against on the Giants, really has a great potential to break out this season. Some guys that I'm a little lower on in this range are Dalton Kincaid as a top 4 tight end. I don't really think that that's great value for him. Another one that I'm kind of low on as well is Kenneth Walker, because Kenneth Walker to me has shown a lot of burst and potential, but he's also got Zach Charbonnet there, and he's also a guy that doesn't really give you a lot in the passing game. He's incredibly explosive and can give you a lot of value there, but I think that there's a little bit of danger in terms of chasing some of his performance from last season. So at this position here, I'm going into the 412 now, and I've got some guys on the board like Mark Andrews, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, Keenan Allen, George Pickens, etc. So for me, this was a good time for me to get a tight end because once you get past McBride, there's a lot of question marks with these guys. And to me, a very underrated sleeper coming into this season is Mark Andrews. He did not play well last year. A lot of that was attributed to injuries, but this is a guy that when he is healthy, he is the number 1 target for Lamar Jackson. So Mark Andrews is going to get volume, and relative to the tight end field, there's not many guys that are very comparable to that. Sam Laporta is going to be a good tight end. As I said earlier, I don't think he's 2nd round value. Travis Kelce, theoretically, but again, age is a concern. Trey McBride is a good sleeper to consider, and I did put a lot of thought into him, but I ultimately went with Andrews because of the longevity and the known number 1 target in that offense. There's a lot of question marks with Arizona in terms of what it's going to look like with Marvin Harrison, Kyler Murray being back for a full season. What is that offense going to look like now? So I went with more of a known factor here in this draft, and I went with Mark Andrews to lock up that tight end position, and that way I'm not messing around with guys like Jake Ferguson and Evan Ingram and stuff like that later on that are going to be very risky plays. Because as you all probably realize in the tight end field in fantasy football, you either have the elite ones or you've got to be streaming week to week. And to me, if you could get a tight end in this range that gives you good value, but not overreach into that first and second round, you get it in the fourth, fifth, um, that type of range, that's pretty good value for me for a tight end. So I'm happy with Mark Andrews here. I put a lot of thought into this next pick of what to do. I put a lot of thought into Keenan Allen. I put a lot of thought into Alvin Kamara. Put a lot of thought into George Pickens. Tank Dell also got some consideration for me as well. But ultimately, I went here with T. Higgins. And the reason that I went with Higgins is that this is a guy that has mostly been underwhelming in fantasy football in the past. But when he is healthy, which again, that's an if, but when he is healthy, he is easily an elite wide receiver. And this is a Bengals team that's going to be going through a little bit of an identity shift from the way they've been in the past. They're not going to have as great of a run game. They've lost some other receivers that have been reliable in the past, like Tyler Boyd. So there's going to be a lot of need for T. Higgins to step up on this team. He's also got a chip on his shoulder this year. Didn't get the contract extension that he would have liked. So he's going to be playing with some fire this season and really going to be trying to prove himself. So I really like betting on that and betting on Joe Burrow finding a way to get him the ball, because this team is going to need Chase and Higgins to run this offense, because they're going to be relying on a relatively new running game. I'm going to get into this in a sec of some of the guys I like there. But T. Higgins, I really like to stand out on this team. I didn't go with Allen because, again, age and new system. George Pickens, questions with the quarterback. Kamara, again, age, and then just kind of what that team is going to look like. They seem like they're kind of on the downhill. So ultimately, I went with Higgins here, but there's a lot of options that you could have also considered. Other picks that I like in the fifth round, I'm going to talk on Anthony Richardson. This is a guy that is, if he gets right and gets healthy, this could be an elite pick here, getting Anthony Richardson here at the end of the fifth round. This is a guy that I'm going to be talking about more as the season goes along, but if he could stay healthy, this is a real sleeper in fantasy football, and I would arguably consider reaching for him higher in this position. Put a lot of thought into him as well, so that's something to consider. I just wanted to make sure in this particular draft that I had the receivers locked in. We get to the guys that I don't really like in this range is Kyle Pitts. This guy has lived off of hype for what is probably 4 years now. Hard to believe. 3 or 4, something like that. But this guy has lived off of hype and done almost nothing with it. I know that he's getting a new quarterback now and Arthur Smith is gone, but to me, I'm not touching Kyle Pitts until he proves me that he's wrong. I know he's got a lot of potential, but can he actually function as a tight end in the NFL is still a significant question mark. We get into the sixth round now. Picks that I like in this range. Rome Odunze is somebody that I do really like. I just have questions about his volume. Also really like in this range getting a guy like Terry McLaurin is, he had a bad season, but I do see him as an ability to come back. Jordan Addison is great sleeper value here in this. I think among these picks, I probably prefer Addison the most because, this is a number 2 wide receiver on a team that they're going to be going through some quarterback changes, and there's going to be question marks about that, but he's shown a lot of potential. And then guys that I don't really like, I have a lot of question marks about some of the running backs here. James Conner, good player, but he's getting up there in age, and they're bringing in some new guys that kind of make me question what his outlook is going to be. DeAndre Swift moving to Chicago. He's bounced around on so many teams now. I kind of have a question of what that will really look like. Could be a great pick, but, this is a guy that I think as he moves to the Bears offense, he's going to have some opportunity, but I think it's a little bit risky to take him in this situation, considering that he's a guy that he was on the Lions and he was on the Eagles, and then now he's on the Bears. Usually when guys move around like that, it's a sign that they're kind of losing a step. So I'm a little bit hesitant for that. Getting Joe Burrow here is pretty decent value too. Comment on that. I don't really like the rushing totals that Burrow gives you. So elite quarterback when he's healthy, but he's got to prove that he's healthy, and he doesn't really give you a ton of upside in terms of his ability to run the football. So when I got around to this pick now at 612, I was considering a couple different things. Um, this is when the running back scene really starts to get pretty rough. I'm not high on Tony Pollard. I think that Tajay Spears is a better option in that backfield in Tennessee. Ramondre Stevenson, I can't believe he got that contract they did from the Patriots. This guy is going to be a landmine for whoever lands with him. Najee Harris, again, another guy that I think is not the best running back in that backfield. Talk on that in a little bit. And then Zamir White, who is a hypothetical. So at this point, you don't really like a lot of the running backs. The receivers also have some question marks here. You got Lad McConkey, who is a hypothetical number one receiver in this team, but there's a lot of question marks with what that'll look like. Calvin Ridley, who's always a hypothetical and generally never lives up to it. And then Chris Godwin, who I mentioned earlier, was disappointing last season. So at this point, like, I'm looking for upside. And a guy that has a lot of upside who played well and kind of burst onto the scene last season, but didn't really take off to the degree that people know who he is and are hyping up a lot, is Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed dealt with some injuries and was kind of in and out of their offense, but was the most targeted receiver in an up-and-coming Packers system led by Jordan Love. So at this point in the draft, I've missed on some of the elite quarterbacks that could be up there. I've missed on, maybe some of the elite wide receivers that could be out there. So I'm kind of taking a flyer on guys like Mike Evans and T. Higgins that are good receivers, but maybe they may not live up to the expectations. So at this point, I'm going to choose to stack here and bet on the upside that if a tandem between Jayden Reed and Jordan Love hits, then this gives me even more value on top of what I already have with McCaffrey, Etienne, Evans, etc. So I'm doing this as an upside play here. If Jordan Love was not available here, I don't know if I would do this, but just because of the situation I'm in the draft, I chose to stack with Jayden Reed and Jordan Love. Some other guys that were put into consideration here were Kyler Murray, and believe it or not, Caleb Williams was also put into consideration there as well. I was very tempted to do that. He's going to have some question marks just because he is a rookie, but I think if you could get him in the 8th round as he's projected to here, this is a guy that was extremely successful in college in a pro offense, and he heads into a system where he has DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze as his 3 wide receivers. He's got a great defense. He's got DeAndre Swift, who I just talked about I don't really like for fantasy, but he is a capable running back. I mean, this is guys stepping into as good a situation as you can get in fantasy football, and I think Caleb Williams could be a huge sleeper here. But I decided to take Jordan Love because of the upside here in the stack, and I do really like Jordan Love and think that he's going to be an underrated quarterback to take. Other guys of note in this 7th round that I like Kyler Murray. I think that he played very well to end last season, and he's flying under the radar. Brock Bowers is interesting. Rookie tight ends usually struggle off the gate. I mean, Sam Laporta was kind of an exception to that last year, but it's interesting idea to take Brock Bowers. I just don't know with that quarterback room and what that team's going to look like if that's going to work out for him. Other guys I kind of don't really like in this are Lad McConkey because, I mean, just because he was taken in the 2nd round, it doesn't mean that he's going to step up right away and just become an elite receiver. So I think guys like Trey Palmer are a little more interesting to me in that regard. We get to the 8th round. Really like Keon Coleman here. I think that he could really step in that Buffalo Bills system, a team that does need wide receivers to step up and be a great pick. He's more of the upside play, so there's more of a boom-bust quality there, but you have a lot of potential for boom there. Other guys that I like here, I already talked about Caleb Williams. David Njoku is a solid tight end to get in this range. Austin Eckler, I think this is a great value for him, getting him at this range as well. I was hoping he would fall to me, but it didn't really work out. Guys I don't really like, DeAndre Hopkins here, I don't think that's very good value. I don't think that it's really worth it to wait for Nick Chubb here. He could come back, but again, a lot of question marks there. A pretty gruesome injury, and Javonte Williams is also looking pretty rough in training camp so far. So at this position, I had a couple options here. Jalen Warren, Zach Moss. I I looked at some running backs that I could kind of fill up some of my depth, so I thought about those guys. Um, Also looked at some of the wide receivers here as potential options. I could have gone Christian Watson and get some more Packers in there. Decided not to do that. So what I decided to do here was I decided to take Jaylen Warren. And the reason I like Jaylen Warren is because this Pittsburgh team has had a backfield that has of Najee Harris that has really not lived up to expectations. And Jaylen Warren was by far the more explosive running back. He just didn't really get the opportunity. So now that they're moving to Arthur Smith, a lot of people dogged him because of how he did in Atlanta, but he does run a good offensive system, and I think that he's going to find a way to get Jaylen Warren some more touches here. Najee Harris did better as the season went along, but I think ultimately Warren gives you some good upside here. And, if you're hoping for that Derrick Henry level upside that you can get with a guy like him, which I don't think is possible because they're not the same build and style of running back. But if he could just get some similar that system that focuses on running backs and gets Warren some touches, this could be a great value here in the 8th round. Other guys that I looked at great value here, I decided to take Jackson Smith and Jigba here at wide receiver. Put a lot of thought into some of the other receiving options that were available here, like Deontay Johnson, like, Adonai Mitchell, some of the rookies in there, Jamison Williams. Put some thought into those guys. But I decided to go with Smith and Jigba because this Seattle team, Lockett is on the decline. Metcalf is inconsistent as he's pretty much always been throughout his career. Smith and Jigba dealt with injuries last year, but I do think that JSN is going to break out this year and will have a better season. And getting him here at the 9th round is pretty good. So I'm happy with that. So right now my team is looking like Christian McCaffrey and Travis Etienne as my running backs with Warren as my backup. I've got 4 wide receivers. I've got Evans, Higgins, Reed, and Smith and Jigba. I've got Mark Andrews as my tight end and Jordan Love as my quarterback. Pretty good, all things considered. I'm pretty happy overall with my starters. Now my focus at this point is going to be on building my running back and my wide receiver depth. Don't really need to take another quarterback here unless I see a great value here that I like, and see what happens from there. So this point in the draft, you want to be focusing on getting some good flex options on your bench that could sub in, and maybe some lottery tickets as well. So we go through this 9th round. A couple of good options here are Brian Robinson. If Eckler's injury or if Eckler's adjustment to this new system doesn't really go well, Brian Robinson did do well last season. I just don't know if he's going to get the touches here to validate that pick. A lot of people like Zach Moss, but I'm a little more high on the guy that I'm going to take coming up. I'll talk about that a little more. And then guys that I don't really like here, these tight ends are not great value for me here. Hawkinson is okay, but he's coming off a major injury and probably not going to play right away. Not really big on Jake Ferguson and Dalton Schultz. I think that it would be better to just kind of stream tight ends at this point than really try to take a tight end this high. Other guys as we get into the next round. Some receivers that stand out to me that could be good here are Adonai Mitchell, as I mentioned earlier, stepping into Indiana. Could get a lot of opportunity there. I could have gone with Dobbs potentially to pair with Jordan Love, but I don't really think that he is going to be that guy to really validate taking another Packers wide receiver here. Guys that I really like in this round are Tajay Spears going to in the 10th round. I think this guy is going to be the lead running back on this team. He already was out snapping Derrick Henry a lot last season, and I don't think that Tony Pollard is going to be somebody that's going to threaten his season. Tajay Spears getting him here in the 10th round. This is a huge sleeper to me. The guy that I ended up going with here when it got back around to 10-12 is Chase Brown. And I'm going here off of the upside. Zach Moss is a solid running back who did well last season with the time that was given to him, but he is not a, should I say, an elite running back. He gives you a very modest floor, but doesn't really give you some great elite upside. Chase Brown is somebody that has incredible speed, and given this Bengals system, I think that he actually could be the guy that takes over as the RB1 on this team, filling Mixon's void. So I really like Chase Brown at this position. I think this could be some great value for him. And then I usually am not a proponent of taking two quarterbacks, but just looking at the field, look at these next three running backs like Zeke Elliott, Jerome Ford, Zach Charbonnet. That doesn't really move the needle for me. These wide receivers coming up here are also a little bit iffy to me. So what I decided to do is go with Justin Herbert here. And this is incredibly low for Herbert, who just a few years ago was going in the 4th, 5th round. And I'm seeing this as a guy that, I could try to rehabilitate. If he rehabilitates his value, I could flip him, try to get another flex. Or if things go south and Jordan Love doesn't play well, then I could bring in Herbert if he does do well. If Herbert's not doing anything for me, I can try to flip him because of name value. But getting him here in the 11th round is pretty good value for me, and I decided to go that direction to give myself some insurance there. Not a great proponent of doing things like that, but just in this particular situation, I decided to take Herbert. We'll fly through this a little bit faster. I'll just point out some guys that stand out here in this 11th and 12th round. So this is the range where I think you can get some solid tight ends here. Cole Kmet would be pretty good, especially if you have Caleb Williams. Guys that I don't really like here, Tyler Lockett. Don't really like Mike Williams. Really not a big fan of any of these receivers. I think there's some better ones here in the 12th round, like Xavier Legette could be a guy that could step up. These quarterbacks here are mostly like meh, not really interested in them. Chuba Hubbard and Kendre Miller are both running backs that I like in this range. I was hoping for one of them, but ultimately I ended up going with Rico Dowdle by the time it got back around to me, because this is a guy that, I don't know what Dallas is doing trying to bring back Zeke as their RB1, but Zeke is kind of past his prime, and Rico Dowdle is a guy that was starting to play better than Tony Pollard in spurts. I actually picked him up for a brief spurt last season to kind of see what he would do. He's a guy worth taking a flyer on. It's not, somebody that I really put a lot of stock into, but if he does emerge as the RB1, this could give you some great value in a Dallas offense that definitely has some fantasy players and could give you a great value here. And then the receiver I decided to go with, I'm going with another stack in Josh Palmer. So Justin Herbert has got a whole new slew of receivers. A guy that has been in this locker room that knows the system is Josh Palmer. He's been nothing special, but maybe this could theoretically be the time that he can break out. There's some other hypotheticals here that could be very good, but I'm going to go with some stability here for a guy who's not that old. He's only a few years into the league. I believe this is his fourth year. And just that familiarity with Justin Herbert, I think if he can take advantage of that, you're getting a guy in the 13th round that is some great value for you. So in years past, I've talked about the kicker problem in fantasy football of people taking kickers too high. It appears that Sleeper and the fantasy football community has caught on to that, at least with this. But I'm telling you, there's going to be guys that take kickers way earlier. And there's just no kicker that's worth it for me out there. Justin Tucker is not worth it. Brandon Aubrey is potentially worth it, but still, you're sacrificing yourself some better depth that I think is not going to be valuable. You can pick up a kicker on waivers. And as you can see here, I didn't even draft a kicker for that reason. So you see here in this 14th round that kickers went off the board all in a row, and then defenses went off all in a row. In the next round, it'd be really interesting if the fantasy football community all did that, but they didn't really do that here. But there's going to be people that reach for these positions, and they're just not worth it generally unless it's something that really stands out. And I don't really think that's the case in this season. So by the time it got back around to me at 14-12, I decided to lock in Christian McCaffrey's handcuff. If anything happens to the best player in fantasy football, I want to make sure that I have his backup at all costs. So I took Elijah Mitchell here, and maybe there's I believe his name is I can't remember the name of the third running back for the life of me right now. Jordan something or other. This is bad. I got to look this up. Like, what is the third running back? San Francisco 49ers. Bear with me for just 1 second. Jordan Mason. I knew it was Jordan something. I couldn't remember it. But so maybe there could be a little more value in Jordan Mason here. But I decided to go Elijah Mitchell because that guy's been in the system for a while, knows the 49ers. If anything happens to Christian McCaffrey, I have him locked in there. And then, defenses, surprised none of them went off the board. But how about the 49ers defense? They've been probably one of the best defenses in fantasy football. You know you're going to get sacks with Nick Bosa. You know you're going to get interceptions. Getting them here in the last round is excellent value for me. So I really like where I'm at this point in the draft. I'm going to go through my team. My quarterback is Jordan Love. I've got Justin Herbert as a backup. I could, play matchups there, maybe flip Herbert, flip Jordan Love, potentially, etc. I've got two great running backs. I've got McCaffrey and Etienne. So those are guys who are going to be the workhorses for that team. I've got some pretty good receivers as well. Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Jaden Reed, Smith and Jigba. And then I've got some other guys I could take flyers on, like Josh Palmer, maybe stream some other guys in and out as they come in. And then running backs, I've got on the bench, I've got Jalen Warren, Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle, Elijah Mitchell. Those are guys that, if things break out for them, I could start to plug them into the flex position, etc. And then my tight end is Mark Andrews. And my defense is San Francisco. And I didn't draft a kicker because I'll figure that out the day before the draft. I'm going to talk more on that throughout this series. So if you like this video, please be sure to subscribe at the link below. And check out my other content as well. And we'll get ready for fantasy football in 2024. All right. Well, I'll see you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your week.